The moment didn't begin loudly. It rarely does. There was already tension in the room that night, nothing anyone would name, just a thinness in conversation, responses arriving half a second too late. Christmas had always been structured in our house, predictable. That year it felt rehearsed. I remember standing near the edge of the dining room, not fully seated, not fully part of anything. That had become normal without anyone pointing it out. My mother was speaking about something small, something logistical, but her tone carried more weight than the topic required. My sister interrupted her or maybe corrected her. It was hard to tell. Then, without warning, it shifted. "Get out of my house," my mother said. Not raised, not shouted, clear. There's a difference between anger and dismissal. This wasn't anger, it was removal. For a second, no one moved. That pause people have when they're deciding whether something just said is real or temporary. I didn't argue, not because I agreed, but because I recognized the tone. There wasn't anything to negotiate. I stepped back, reaching for my coat. That's when my sister stood up. I didn't see the exact moment her hand moved. I only registered the contact sharp, sudden, not forceful enough to feel violent, but enough to unbalance. The step behind me wasn't there. The fall was. It wasn't dramatic. No sound beyond the dull impact and the shift of air leaving my lungs. For a moment, everything narrowed to the ground. The cold, the disorientation of trying to understand where my body had landed. Then, the pain followed. Not immediate, it spread. I stayed there longer than I expected to. Not because I couldn't get up. Because I was waiting. The door closed behind me. That's what I remember most. Not the fall, not even the pain. The door, no footsteps, no voices, no one coming out to check. I sat up slowly, my arm already beginning to resist movement in a way that didn't feel temporary. The street was quiet. Lights from neighboring houses, distant and unaffected. I got up on my own. Recovery wasn't marked by any single moment. It was a series of small adjustments. Learning how to move differently. How to manage daily tasks with limitations that weren't expected. The kind of inconvenience that becomes routine if you don't question it too much. The fracture healed. That's what they told me. But something else had already settled into place. I didn't call them, they didn't call me. At first it felt like a pause, then it became something else, a pattern that no longer required effort to maintain. There are things you start to notice when distance becomes consistent. Not just what's missing, but what had always been there. I thought back to other moments, smaller ones, easier to overlook at the time. Comments that landed just slightly off, decisions made without including me, apologies that didn't quite acknowledge what had happened. Individually, they had never seemed enough. Together, they formed something more stable than I wanted to admit. I stopped trying to reinterpret them. That was new. 6 months passed without contact. Not as a statement, just as a result. By then, my life had rearranged itself in quieter ways. Work filled in spaces that used to be occupied by expectation. People I hadn't relied on before became more present. Nothing dramatic, just different. When my phone rang, I almost didn't answer. The number was familiar but distant enough to feel optional. I picked up on the third ring. My mother's voice came through immediately, faster than usual, carrying urgency she hadn't used with me in a long time. "She needs help," she said. No greeting. No pause. I didn't ask who. I already knew. "It's her company," she continued. "There's a situation. It's serious." I listened. Not passively, just without interrupting. The details came in fragments. Financial strain, deadlines, things that needed to be resolved quickly. There was an assumption built into the way she spoke, like this was a continuation of something we had never stopped. "She won't get through this without support," my mother added. Support. The word sat there familiar. I let a second pass before responding. "I don't have a sister," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't add anything to it. There was silence on the other end. Not long, but different. "What are you saying?" she asked. I didn't repeat myself. There wasn't another version of it that would make it clearer. The line stayed open for a moment longer. Then she began again, softer this time, less certain. "Trying to reframe, to pull the conversation back into something recognizable. I didn't follow. After a few more seconds, I ended the call. I didn't feel relief or satisfaction, just a kind of stillness that hadn't been there before. The same way the door had closed that night final, without needing to be explained. But this time, I was on the side that chose it. I don't know what happened with her company. I don't look it up. Some things don't require updates. What I do know is that nothing I said was about punishment. It was about definition. And once something is defined clearly enough, it doesn't leave much room for negotiation. The arm healed. They said it would, and it did. But I still notice it sometimes. Not the pain, just the memory of how long I waited for someone to come outside, and how eventually I stood up without them.